This morning on Wake Up College Football, Mark Rogers was talking about the toughest schedules in the Big 12. And I mentioned West Virginia has a really tough schedule because they do. But one thing I hadn't done was looked at every team's schedule. I knew who had an easy schedule, I knew who had a hard schedule, but I wanted to compare them. So I'm going to do that in this video. We're going to look at the top five toughest schedules in the Big 12. Well, what I think are the top five anyway. So stay tuned and we'll talk about that right after this. Okay, so I've come up with what I think are the top five toughest schedules in the Big 12. And I want to hear your opinions of it. So I'm going to show you the schedules. I'm going to talk about them, tell you where I've ranked them in the Big 12. And let me know in the comments section if you agree with me, disagree with me, if I'm stupid, if I'm smart, if whatever. Just make a comment. Let me know what you guys think about this. Here we go. Number five, I have BYU. BYU, pretty tough schedule. So they're starting off pretty, easy enough, just like everybody else with Southern Illinois. And then they got to go to SMU week two. Then at Wyoming week three. So that's tough. And then Kansas State week four and Baylor week five. Now, Baylor's not going to be very good. We all know this, or we suspect them not to be good. But SMU, Wyoming, and Kansas State are three pretty good teams, especially Kansas State in there. All right. So then they got a bye week, and then they go to they don't go to. They get Arizona at home. Then they get Oklahoma State at home. Now that's good that those two teams are coming home. If them two teams would have been on the road, this would have been the toughest schedule in the Big 12 probably. But Arizona and Oklahoma State, they've got them at home, so that's good. Um, UCF, they're going to UCF there on Saturday, October 26th. Not going to be an easy road trip. Then they got their second bye week, and then they come. They got to go to Utah, and we know how Utah is. Utah's gonna be a fantastic team. So that's Saturday, November 9th. Then the following week they play Kansas, but they do get Kansas at home. Then they got to play Arizona State and Houston. So they've got a couple little tough games in there. If you look at the beginning of the schedule with SMU, Wyoming, Kansas State, and Baylor, if they lose three of those four games, that could derail the season because they're coming back with Arizona and Oklahoma State. They're most likely going to lose those two games. So, that would make them with five losses already and only halfway through the season. So, yeah, I thought I chose BYU as number four. All right. So, or number five, I'm sorry. Number four, I've got Baylor. So Baylor's starting off easy enough, like everyone else, Tarleton State. But then they got to go to Utah, then they play Air Force, then they go to Colorado, then they have BYU, they go to Iowa State, then they got a bye week, then they got to go to Texas Tech, and then they come back home finally, and they play Oklahoma State and TCU at home. Then they got a bye week, then they got to go to Morgantown. Wow, this might be a little bit tougher schedule than I thought, but I know why I put Baylor where I did. They got to go to Morgantown and play West Virginia, and then they got to go to Houston, and then they get Kansas at home. So right off the bat, you can see they're playing Kansas, West Virginia, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, Iowa State, and Utah. Six of the top 7 or 8 teams that are projected to be in the Big 12 this year, they've got to play. And a lot of them on the road. So Baylor's probably got a little bit tougher schedule than the fourth toughest. But let's hold off. Don't pass judgment yet. Let's go to the next schedule. So at number three, the third toughest schedule I have in the Big 12 is Colorado. Colorado starts off with North Dakota State, and then they got to go to Nebraska and to Colorado State. And then finally they get some home games against Baylor, and then they got to go back on the road to UCF. So that's going to be a long trip from Colorado to UCF, and that's going to be a tough road game. So that's going to be the first part of the schedule. Looks like that could be manageable for Colorado, but here's where it starts to be relevant. So then they have their bye week. Then they got to play Kansas State. Good thing they get them at home. probably not going to help them any. Then they got to go to Arizona, and then they got to play Cincinnati at home. Cincinnati, okay, they could beat Cincinnati, not a problem. Kansas State and Arizona, uh, probably not going to happen. Then they got their second bye week, and then they got to go travel to Texas Tech. Then they play Utah. Then they got to travel to Kansas, and then they play Oklahoma State. Them last four games right there, that is brutal. You know, you're going to Texas Tech, then you got Utah at home, going to Kansas, and then coming back home for Oklahoma State for your final game. That's probably four losses, probably four very easy losses right there. You know, and then in the middle of the schedule, you got the two tough games with Kansas and Arizona. That's six losses right there, right? So what can they do? Can they go 6-6? I can count six losses that are almost guaranteed for Colorado, in my opinion. But let me know what you guys think. So Colorado, I've got them at number three, the third toughest schedule in the Big 12. All right, number two, this is going to surprise some people. I know because all along I've been seeing this team probably have the toughest schedule. But number two, I've got West Virginia, toughest, second toughest schedule in the Big 12, in my opinion. Starts off really tough, right? They got the home opener against Penn State. Penn State coming to Morgantown for the first time in a very long time. It was always a heated rivalry. Penn State's kind of dominated that rivalry, so it's not probably not a rivalry to Penn State, but it is always a good game, especially if it's in Morgantown. Then they had their cupcake game, and then they get Pitt at home. So that's a good thing that Pitt at home is sure. And here's why. Here's why it's a good thing. If it was Pitt and West Virginia and it wasn't a rivalry game, I think West Virginia takes the game easy. But being it's a rivalry game, it's got to be tough, and I've got to figure that in there because rivalry games are all tough, and we all know that. So I have to figure that in. All right, then they've got to play Kansas, and they do get Kansas at home. But 2 years ago, Kansas beat us. That started the Lance Leipold era. They came into Morgantown. It was like game three. I think West Virginia was undefeated. Kansas was undefeated, and Kansas beat West Virginia. And that was the first time they had beaten West Virginia since, well, I don't know. To be honest with you, had they ever beaten West Virginia in the Big 12? Maybe. I'm not sure. But Kansas, that started their ascent into the team they are today. And because they ended up doing pretty good that season. All right, then you look and they got their bye week. Then they have West Virginia's got to go to Oklahoma State. Then they play Iowa State at home. Then they play Kansas State at home. Then they got to go to Arizona. So you look at them, that 5-6 game stretch right there. And there's a bye week in there, but you got Pitt, Kansas, then a bye week. Oklahoma State, Iowa State, Kansas State, Arizona. That is tough. I don't care who you are. That's a tough slate of games there, those 6 games. So can West Virginia come out of it looking pretty good? I don't know. Then they finish off after another bye week, coming back Saturday, November 9th. They go to Cincinnati. Then they got Baylor at home, UCF at home, and then they got to travel to Texas Tech. So that last game of the year, that could be a really good game. If West Virginia can pull off all these victories here in the middle, Texas Tech could easily win, you know, 10, 11 games. Them two teams, excuse me, those two teams could play for the Big 12 championship, and that last game would be, or maybe even decide who's going to get into the Big 12 championship against maybe a Utah or an Arizona or somebody. But Texas Tech going to their last game of the year. So once again, tough, right? So who has the toughest schedule? In my opinion, the toughest schedule in the Big 12. When you see a schedule, you're gonna say, "Oh yeah," and also because of who it is. So Arizona State, in my opinion, has the toughest schedule in the Big 12, and it has a lot to do with who they are right now as a program because they are a dumpster fire right now. They can't seem to get any traction, get anything going. So every game is going to be a challenge for them. But then look at this schedule and tell me if you don't think it's going to be a challenge. They open up the season with Wyoming. They get them at home. Then they got to play Mississippi State. Hey, they get them at home. That's a good thing. But then they got to go to Texas State and then to Texas Tech. So, you could see three losses there out of four pretty easy for Arizona. And really, you could see all four of those games being a loss, to be honest with you. Yeah. Then you got a bye week. You got a bye week. All right. Then coming back Saturday, October 5th, they got to play Kansas. Now they do get Kansas at home. Then they got to play Utah. They do get Utah at home, and then they're at Cincinnati. But look at that. So Mississippi State, Texas State. Okay, Texas State. We'll skip over. Let's just say Mississippi State, Texas Tech, Kansas, Utah, and Cincinnati, right there, pretty much in a row. Then they got a bye week. Then look at this slate of games at the end. At Oklahoma State, UCF, at Kansas State, BYU, and at Arizona. Three of those five are on the road against three of the toughest teams in the Big 12, Oklahoma State, Kansas State, and Arizona. So there's no doubt in my mind, Arizona State has the toughest football schedule in the Big 12, mainly because of who they are. If they were a little bit better team, they might be able. This might be a little bit more manageable schedule. But as of right now, there's no way they're going to be able to manage this schedule. I don't think. So I've got the. That's what I've got. That's my top five. So we'll go over through them again, and I'll tell you I've got BYU at number 5. Going to be a good year for them. Probably I see them finishing somewhere towards the lower middle of the conference, right? So maybe ninth, eighth, ninth, somewhere in there, 10th. Then you have Baylor. Got Baylor finishing at the bottom of this conference this year. I just don't think Dave Aranda is going to be able to put it together. The team didn't play with any energy last year. They looked, they looked like they were struggling really big time. Now, can he get them going and get them motivated and get them back into the game? Absolutely. It's a brand new year, brand new season, brand new players. So, we'll have to see what's changed there. But Baylor with the fourth toughest, third toughest is Colorado, the Fighting Deion Sanders, right? Prime time. Listen, Colorado, Colorado fans, I'm with you guys. All right, you think you're going to have a great season. You've got a coach that obviously has been in football for a very, very, very long time, played at the highest level, coached really good where he came from, but now he's coaching Power 5 football, and he's trying to build a roster off of transfers, and you just really can't do that. You have to have a fundamental base inside your program where you've recruited some players that are true Colorado fans, right? And they want to play for Colorado, whether they're walk-ons or you're recruiting or whatever. You have to have that base. When you're just sitting here pulling every player you've got on your team out of the transfer portal, you can't build a team like that. That's not a team. All right. Then, like I said, number 2, I've got WVU. Even though they have the toughest out of conference schedule in the Big 12, without a doubt. But then they should be a pretty good team this year. So that's why I put Arizona State at number 1, because I know Arizona State's going to finish at the bottom of this conference. I think everybody knows that, or everybody assumes that. I don't know it. I assume it. The game's not been played yet, but so I think Arizona State's going to struggle a lot more with their schedule. That's why I have their schedule harder than West Virginia's, because I think West Virginia's a lot better team. I know West Virginia's a lot better team, so I don't think they'll struggle as much. So that's my top 5. Once again, tell me in the comments section what you think. And everyone, I appreciate you being here today. Take care, and we will see you. Don't forget, Mountaineer Locker Room, Then and Now with Frank Fears is Wednesday nights. Thursday nights, Big 12 with me and Shane at 7 o'clock. And on Friday nights is Shane's new show, West Virginia, covering West Virginia football. So everyone, be sure and tune in every day of the week. We do something for you right here on West Virginia football at the Voice of College Football. Have a great day.